on my guest, but I'm joined by Andrea Tartaglia, who is the managing director at the. Was that good?
It was very good.
Thank you. He's the managing director at the Isokinetic Medical Group. So you've got a very interesting background and backstory, probably a bit different to some of my previous guests on here, but I'm really excited and looking forward to hearing more about that. So Andrea, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a great day in London. I'm in central London. I'm at the clinic in 11 Harley Street. The day has started. We got patients. We're looking after them, which is what we're here for. So all good so far.
Brilliant. And yeah, how have you got in today? I know you like to use the commute for fitness. So how have you got in today?
So normally I will start the week by checking the weather forecast for the week, and then decide what I do. And my preferred way of getting to work is either running or cycling, if the weather is okay. I have a little tolerance for rain. So if it's a drizzle, I will keep going. If it's pouring rain, I wouldn't. So when I run from home to here, which is about 9 kilometers. Every now and then I extend it to 10. I run one way, either in or out. If I cycle, I do both ways. I've got a backpack. I put everything in my backpack so I can change either here or at home. And to me, it's the best way of starting the day because I can do some exercise while commuting, which doesn't feel like I'm wasting time.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, start you off in a good. I'd have to do it in the morning. I think I'd struggle trying to do that run.
Absolutely. It's ironic, but you get more energy by doing exercise, but than not. You know, I feel it's like today I was expecting race, or I didn't cycle or I didn't run. And I feel my energy levels are a bit lower than normal because I get more energy if I had exercised.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm the same. Well, hopefully we can raise your energy a bit anyway in this chat. So
yeah, I don't want to worry you. I had my coffee. That's okay.
Great. So yeah, I'm really intrigued to your background. So we've met loads of times, and I always really enjoy hearing about you. But I'm interested in hearing your backstory. So where are you from originally?
So I'm Italian. I was born in Rome. My family moved then to Milan when I was very little. And I lived in Milan until I moved to the UK, which was just over 25 years ago. And since then, I've been living in London. I had a very short gap in which I was commuting to Spain for about a year. In these 25 years, I was officially working in Spain, but I was still based here. So yeah, now in maybe a year or two, London will be the place where I live the most.
Right, yeah, that's interesting then. So what was it like growing up in two massive cities in Italy?
I can't remember really Rome because I was very little when I was there. I think I moved to Milan when I was 2. And in growing in Milan, I think, and then I changed my mind later on, but I think growing up in Milan is probably the best place to grow up in Italy, because Milan is one of the most internationally connected cities. Is very much focused on business. It's a relatively wealthy city. You got access to the best schools, to the best jobs, to the best business school where I went for university. So in terms of the opportunities I had by growing up in Milan, I'm very happy with that. What I didn't quite appreciate until the last years in Milan, and then certainly when I moved here to London, was that it's not the best place for your social life. So in the last couple of years when I was in Milan, my fiance, who was now my wife, was living in Rome. So I went to Rome much more frequently than I used to visit my family before. And I discovered Rome from a social perspective. Before I was just going to visit my family, and now I was going to be with my girlfriend or my fiance, and we were doing things with friends and stuff that I'd never done before. So I started appreciating a kind of social life that was much more open, much more, light, if you want, than Milan. Milan is so focused, and people are very concentrated on their work and their career that they miss out a little bit the joys of life, of living. And I found that in Rome, and then I found that even more when I moved here. So for your education and your work, Milan, best place in Italy. For your social life, not quite.
Oh, right, that's interesting. Yeah, I've been to absolutely love Rome. I love sightseeing and touristy stuff, so I still love coming to see you in London, and getting in a few sites while you're there as well. So Milan was the positives of it being that it was great for your education and networking, I presume, and
Yeah.
right then the other challenges of things. So what point did you, was it because you were in Milan that you wanted to get involved in business, or how did that dynamic work?
Yeah. So I guess I was a little bit undecided on what to do in my life in terms of the kind of profession I wanted to have. And at a certain point, I was undecided between two possible routes, and then I sort of joined them into one. One was, apart from when I was a kid and I wanted to be an astronomist and all these things, fancy thing, right? But when I started becoming serious about my career, I had two paths. One was business, and the other one was psychology. And eventually, so I had two choices: go to business school in Milan or go to study psychology in Padua, which is another northern city in Italy. And eventually, I decided to take the business choice, but in a way that could also get me involved in some sort of psychology. So I studied business, I majored in marketing, and within marketing, I was studying advertising. And in fact, my dissertation at the end of the university was about how advertising can influence or can use psychology to influence people to do certain behaviors. And so that sort of was my way of combining the two interests into one. And from there, it led to working in an advertising agency where I was applying that knowledge that I built into my daily work. And that's how I started. So I very much, from a business perspective, carry on that way. So that was the very beginning.
Right. And then, so did you it's such a broad spectrum in terms of business marketing. It's a massive area. But how captivating was that? Like, how enjoyable was it? Because I know you were tying in your psychology elements of things as well. But straight away, was it something you loved?
Yeah, I loved the whole environment. It was, was working on. I was lucky enough to work on big clients from the advertising point of view. So my longest client was Kellogg's cereals. I worked for Reebok. I worked for United Airlines, I worked for Procter & Gamble, and I worked for Coca-Cola. So all major clients, we did a lot of good campaigns and a lot of work that was very interesting, exciting. I like the fact that it was project-based, so it was never boring. You had a project for a few months and then you move on to the next one. It was really dynamic, very, very interesting. And I was learning a lot. So from that point of view, I thought that was a great start of my career. Then there were bumps on the road. At a certain point, I had to leave to do national service, which was still mandatory at that time in Italy. Then I came back, and then I started thinking about, okay, is this what I want to do going forward, or I want to do something different? I was very inspired by one of my clients, Procter & Gamble, which was the most structured, strategic, developed. And I was looking at what they were doing in terms of marketing. I thought, okay, they're not doing just advertising; they do all these other things. And I want to be involved in all those other things. One driver of my career was always curiosity and wanting to learn more. And so that gave me the idea of actually, maybe I shouldn't do advertising only, I should do more broader marketing. And that's when I left the advertising world and I entered the media and entertainment world, which was a whole other discovery, many opportunities for learning, many opportunities to satisfy my need for my curiosity and quench my curiosity. So that's how I transitioned from one to the other.
Right. And then, so Procter & Gamble, what were they doing that was different to the other people that was particularly of interest to you?
As they were very, I would say, they're very strategic, very determined, they're very focused on delivering the best marketing, the best a way of selling their products using all the different levers of marketing. It wasn't just advertising, it was sponsorship, it was the product itself, it was the retail element, it was all these things that from the advertising point of view, back then, where it was a bit traditional, that is evolved since, I wasn't exposed to. I was only exposed to indirectly, and I wanted to learn more about it, because in the end, at university, I studied those things too. It wasn't just the advertising that was studied, it was everything else. So that helped me sort of growing as a marketeer.
Yeah,
it was inspiring. It was giving me the inspiration to do more.
Yeah. So how long were you working at the agency for while you were working with all those companies?
I worked for about 5-6 years, with that year gap, which was the national service, which wasn't the best time, I can tell you. So yeah, 6 years, I would say.
Right, and that was in Milan.
Yeah, that was all in Milan.
Right. Were you traveling around much working with these clients, or was it?
Only within Italy. One of my clients was based in Rome, so I was going back and forth to see them. Apart from that, not much. Then the traveling started later when I switched to the entertainment world.
Yeah, yeah. And then so for like these ones, so are you looking after like the Italian marketing of these brands?
Yeah. So the way it worked, and it was different by client. So in certain instances was about taking the global campaigns, so the campaigns that these big international clients were doing internationally, and find a way of making them work in Italy, which was not only literal translation, it was more than that. It was really finding, are they relevant to my market, to my consumers? Would they achieve the objectives that the company is setting? So that kind of thing, it is complex, but we were working on the basis of something that was given to us. In many other instances, we were working on stuff that we were originating. So we would be given a brief by a client based on objective they want to achieve in terms of their communication, and we would develop a marketing campaign, which could be television, radio, whatever. We did sponsorship with TV programs, which was very exciting. It was, maybe that was my first exposure to the entertainment world. I was going to TV channels and working with presenters and showmen to integrate the brands into their shows, which was really fascinating.
Yeah, what was it particularly about that then that you did enjoy doing?
Well, I was spending my days in a TV studios working with talent, briefing them, telling them what to say, and then see how they would elaborate that creatively. I was giving them plain messages, and they were building, sketches and comedies around that. It was really fascinating to see the creative process from a different point of view, from the point of view of a TV host or a comedian or these kind of characters that we were using for as testimonials for our brands. Really cool.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And then so I can imagine having to go and do national service in the middle of that. That's how much creativity do you get to use when you're doing that?
Zero. I was keeping a very low profile, so I didn't want to get involved. I had a problem with doing it, and so despite the fact that I was keeping a low profile, I got promoted. Well, I was going through the ranks, and I was like, no. Well, I was trying to convince my captain that I wasn't worthy of a promotion. First time in my life, only time in my life, and he was insisting, "Oh, you're." I was more senior than the other people in age. I was more mature of the other people I was looking after, and therefore I was prime candidate for a promotion, which I eventually got, and I had to do it. But I don't think that was the best use of my time that 1 year during the military service. But there was an element. So I was, because I spoke English, I was assigned eventually. So the way it works, you do a month of training where you just learn to march, to take orders, to sort of be a good soldier, if you want. And then after that month, you're assigned to 11 months of something else. And in my case, they do some interviews to understand what your skills are, and normally it's like, okay, you carry on being a soldier, that's it, right? And you do nothing for 11 months. In my case, I was, because I spoke English, they put me, which was a little bit interesting, they put me in an office in Milan to work with the team of the Italian army that was liaising with the NATO countries. And this was just before the first Balkan War, and war in the Balkans. And some of the work we were doing there was to simulate what would happen in the case of a Balkan War that then happened. So that was a little bit, but that was like interesting for a week, right? It wasn't a year worth of work. It was 2 weeks would have worked. So in that sense, I thought that it was a waste of time because there wasn't much. But occasionally there were things that were quite interesting.
But do you think you've taken away anything from that has helped you in your career?
No, the only thing I took away was that actually I had time in my hands, and at that point, I hadn't finished my business degree. So I finished my business degree because I was sat in an office doing nothing. So at a certain point, I was bold enough to tell my boss, "Do you mind if I use the time to finish my dissertation?" And he said, "Okay, but when we need you, we need you." And I said, "Okay, fine." And that gave me the opportunity to finish my studies. That's the only thing, really.
Yeah. And then, so how did the move into the media world? How did that come about?
So that, as many things, and maybe we'll get back to this concept of chance when we get to our transition back into or into healthcare. It happened by chance. So I had this idea of wanting to do a proper product marketing role, not just advertising. And at the time, a friend of mine was working for Blockbuster, which is the defunct chain of video rentals. And because she worked at Blockbuster in the marketing department, she was in touch with all the different movie studios that were selling movies to Blockbuster. And she told me that one of the studios were looking for a product manager, and she put me in touch with that. That studio was 20th Century Fox, and that's how I started. So I went in touch. I did the interviews. They offered me the job. I thought it was good, and I started that way. And that second phase of my career, the longest so far, started at that point. With that, me talking to a friend saying, "This is what I want to do." Her having an opportunity that she mentioned to me, and then from there on, it went well, and I started working there. So I started working at 20th Century Fox in Milan, 20th Century Fox, and in the marketing department. I started, doing well there. Really, of course, I love movies, so working on movies was perfect for me, and I found my way. I was doing well. At a certain point, I would say 2 years into my time there, I said that I was interested in working abroad, and the company had a list of people who were mobile, and they were saying, "Okay, if there's an opportunity abroad, we'll look at the list, and if there's a good fit, that job will be offered. You need to go and do interviews, but if you're the right candidate, you'll be offered." And within maybe a month, an opportunity cropped up in London. So I came to London to the interviews. I met my future boss, and everything went well. And after a couple of weeks, the job was mine. And so within that time span, very, very quick, I decided to move to London. I moved to London. And so I carried on in London to work for that company. After a while, my boss left and moved to another studio. And after a little while that she was there, she called me to work with her again in these other settings. And that's how I moved from 20th Century Fox to Universal Pictures. Eventually, I went through the ranks. I was working on at that point on international marketing for all the movies that Universal was releasing. My boss left. I took her place. So I became the head of international marketing at Universal Pictures Home Entertainment. And then at the end of that role, I was offered a role in Spain as the managing director of Spain and Portugal. So I moved to Spain, commuting from London because I wanted my base to still be in London. And when that commute started to be a problem for my family life, I decided to come back to London and find a job in London. And that is when I left Universal to go to Disney, where I spent the next 13 years of my career in various roles. I started in the publishing division, I moved to the licensing division, and then eventually I moved to the corporate role that was responsible for managing the brands that Disney owns and put together the strategies to develop those brands within the European region, which was the last role I had at Disney before leaving.
Right, no, that's interesting. So yeah, just going back to the roles at 20th Century Fox and Universal. So what actually a product manager, what does a product manager do?
So a product manager is responsible for developing and implementing the marketing campaigns for the product. In my case, the products were movies, TV series, documentaries, or all sorts of content that was going to be proposed to audiences in Italy when I was in Italy, and in Europe when I moved to London. In London, I always had either regional or international roles, even global actually at some point. So the perspective was different, but the work was the same. I have a product, a movie, and I need people to love it. And what do I do to make it love it?
So how would you do? Give me, have you got an example of any movies or like things you'd worked on that what you did with them?
Oh, we use different techniques. So the basic one is, of course, you advertise it. So you make people aware of the movie by doing spots, radio campaigns. But I think one thing that I learned that I didn't use much in the advertising world was PR and publicity. So we were lucky enough to have talent available to promote their own content. And so I'll make an example that is relevant to what I'm doing now, which was at a certain point, we wanted to launch a series of fitness video by Claudia Schiffer. And so we had Claudia Schiffer to promote the movie. So we were organizing TV appearances, interviews, this is before podcast. So if it was now, we would have organized the podcast. And we're managing a time while she had maybe a week or two dedicated to the launch of the program in Italy. So we were managing her time, making sure that she was ready for the TV appearances and for everything, for the interviews with the magazines, for everything that we needed to do. So PR was a big thing, and we organized events. So we would do maybe a junket, which is all the different journalists and talk about her program in relation to what we wanted to promote. So things like that. So it was very much advertising. Then, of course, you get more involved into, in my case, it was home entertainment. So not only we're talking about people wanting to enjoy the content, maybe as a movie in the cinemas, but we want them to buy it and to rent it. And so you have to be involved with the people who sell it. And so you get involved on the retail side of things. I had to manage the relationship with the different retailers. In the UK would have been Tesco, Woolworths at the time, and all these places where you can buy very much traditional stores at the beginning. Then it morphed into digital stores and digital availability. So in the time I was in that world, I see the many times transformation. I saw the transformation from VHS to DVD. I'm dating myself here. From tapes to digital in terms of discs, and then from digital discs to digital, proper digital, so files that you download from the internet legally. and then in the recent years, we saw the transformation between physical and digital to one product to the new model, which is streaming. So I've seen all this transformation, which was from a business perspective really interesting to manage.
Yeah, and so how far, I remember those things as well, so I'll date myself with there as well. So I remember DVDs coming out, and how far ahead are you starting to plan? Because remember the famous thing about Netflix talking about once it changed to DVDs, that made their business model work because it wasn't as thick and as heavy as having a VHS.
Yeah.
So how are you involved in that? Like, because Universal, they're huge organizations, and so how involved in those processes of streamlining the tech?
Well, so that's sort of, if you want, business knowledge. So you need to understand what's going on in a market, whatever business you're in. Now healthcare, but before it was entertainment. So you need to understand what the dynamics of the market are and manage that. So if you need to change the way you do things because the market is changing, you have to do that. But that's like normal day-to-day. You collect business insights and you apply them to the day-to-day work. When you see a big transformation, so for example, the change from VHS to DVD or from DVD to Blu-ray, you manage that, you formulate your processes that manage that, you change what you need to change, and you apply that. In more practical terms, in terms of actually the planning, aside from that, which influences everything you do, is each project you plan way ahead. So typically, I would get involved, say in the launch of a movie, I will start getting involved when the idea of the movie is first presented. That is literally an idea. There's nothing more than a director or a writer coming to you and saying, this is the idea of the movie, this is what we want to do. Then you see it developing over time, and you start thinking, okay, this is what we understood that movie was. It's developing and consistently. And so you start thinking about how would you make that movie appealing to audiences, and what kind of marketing you would do to make that appealing to audiences. You start developing the first materials, you start developing trailers, you start developing the relationship with the talent that is involved, and all those things. So I would say, depending on what kind of movie it is, you might start planning 5 years before the movie actually is released. The timeline are normally longer with animation, which have development processes longer, and a little shorter for live action movies. So maybe for live action movies, 2 years ahead. But you start planning, and as the product develops, you fine tune your planning, you fine tune until the movie gets released. At that point, you really go all in and you start marketing that movie to make sure that audiences are aware of it, they're interested in watching, and they're actually buying a ticket to go to the cinema, and then eventually buy a DVD, a Blu-ray, or they're interested in streaming at home.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Yeah, sometimes I'm at the cinema and you'll see Mission Impossible. That I think I've seen a few of those, and they're advertising it like 9 months ahead of when it's coming out. Like, what's the thinking? I never quite understand that. I guess it gets you talking, but what's the thinking behind that?
But it's how you manage the life cycle, if you want, of your marketing or your movie. Ultimately, what we found is that doing consumer research is that people, generally speaking, decide, they take the actual decision to watch a movie within 2 weeks from the day you watch the movie, and most people will watch the movie in the opening weekend or the opening week or the 2 weeks at the beginning of the movie. So you need to concentrate all your efforts in that time, but you need to prepare the basis for that interest to become an action. That means that you go to see the movie. So you start doing what we call a teaser campaign. Typically, you will release a teaser trailer, which you start telling people that the movie is coming, maybe even a year out or 9 months out, as you said. And then you, through the time, as you get to the release date, you give more information. You give more information about the movie. You tell more about the plot. You tell more about the actors involved. You start getting reviews. You start working that PR machine that I mentioned earlier, until you really, really create a lot of noise in the 2 weeks before the movie's release. At that point, we know that you are deciding where you're going to go or not to watch it. And that's when we need to influence you to actually book a ticket. That's what we tell you which cinemas is going to be played, and what the cost of the ticket, all those things that you need to know before deciding to go.
Yeah, no, that's really. I mean, it definitely does get me excited if I see, say, Mission Impossible or whatever it may be. It's like, oh yeah, that. So I guess it does make sense. It's in my mind, and then as soon as it's out, it's like, right, I need to go and see that.
So it's the question is exactly that. You plant a seed and then you let it grow over time until the moment in which you're ready to take the decision.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, like I mean, I guess it's massive business, isn't it? Like the movie business and TV business. So, and then in terms of Disney, how did that happen?
That was maybe the only time it wasn't quite by chance. So, as I said, I was working in Spain at the time, and I wanted to come back to London, and I started contacting some recruiters to see what was available in terms of jobs in London. And I had two interesting jobs they were looking, and I think I chose well. I'll tell you why. The other one would have been working for BlackBerry, which, as you know, doesn't exist anymore. Probably not. It was I didn't predict that, but at the time, but actually, it's a good thing that I didn't join BlackBerry, given how things went. Although they just made a movie about it. You never know. And so the other offer was Disney, and Disney was, of course, as a competitor of Disney, as the company that is the leader of in entertainment, media and entertainment. I was very much attracted by them and decided to join them in a capacity that wasn't quite what I was looking for, but enough to get me into. It was interesting enough to get me into the door, and then find my way in a big company where I think there would be lots of opportunities, which was very much the case. And so having the choice between changing industry at that point or staying within the industry but going to work for the leader of that industry, that was an easy choice. I went for that.
So like Disney, but Disney have massively changed in that time period, haven't they, since then? So were they still seen as the leader in that area then?
Yeah. In multiple businesses, so leaders in movies and home entertainment, if you want, leaders in everything that you do around the movie in terms of merchandising, sales, what they call consumer products, leader in theme parks, leader in holidays, cruises, leader in at some point in music, leader in theater with all the musicals and the shows they have. So you're right, Disney has many different businesses, but pretty much in every business they play in, they're pretty much a leader. And a leader, I would say, both in terms of size and in terms of strategic thinking and impact into the market. So whatever Disney does, then it gets copied. That's been lost a little bit lately, but that's that at the time that was very much the approach.
Right. Yeah. So who was running the company when you joined?
The company was run by Bob Iger, who's now back as the CEO. So I joined at a good time when he was just getting, he was starting to become very effective as the leader and becoming one of the best leaders of an American company, certainly in media, but beyond media, I think. It was right after the acquisition of Pixar, and it was before the acquisition of Marvel and Star Wars, which have been very good turning point in my career within Disney because I got involved with both. So it was when, after years of a different leadership, Disney was coming together under a new leader who had a very clear vision of where he wanted to take the company.
Yeah, no, I watched the masterclass with Bob Iger. I really enjoyed it. Thought he was a great communicator. Just seemed like a really good guy. So, well, I know that's the idea of what he's doing. But did you get much interaction? Like, how big a part does that leadership come down to
because I was in the leadership team of the European office, I had few occasions in which I was in meetings with him, and they were fascinating. It's clearly a very experienced leader, very clever man, very sharp. Quite challenging to be in a meeting with him because you need to keep up with him. So you can't just stand there. But we had good interactions. But so most times I would see him when he was doing maybe town hall meetings. So every time he was coming to London for visits, he would do a meeting with everyone within the company and share his vision, share his updates on the company. But in few occasions, I had smaller meetings with him in which we did a business review where we were talking about a particular issue that needed to be tackled and needed to be presented to me for his input. And those were incredible meetings, as you can imagine. You got, a top leader in one of the biggest conglomerates in the world, and you have the chance to be exposed to him. It was amazing. Really lucky to have done that.
What would you say about him that was the particular, I don't know, 1, 2, or 3 things that you think was just, why he's successful?
Well, the one thing from a personal level, he is, I imagine, still very approachable. So sometimes you feel the pressure of someone much more serious than you in the room, and it didn't feel that way. It was very approachable. It was listening to everyone. It wasn't hierarchical. So that created an atmosphere that was helpful in terms of having a good conversation and having input from everyone. So that absolutely. Then, as I said, very sharp. So it would, we started speaking, and it was never losing the thread of his thoughts and what he wanted to communicate. Even when it was a little bit digressing to explain a concept, it was always coming back. So very clear in communicating the direction and sort of the purpose of the meeting and the outcome of the meeting. That to me, that sharpness. Imagine the complexity of the work he has and all the different pieces. Very knowledgeable, very sharp, very direct in terms of where he wanted you to go. Never losing the thread. Never. Again, great learning in being in the room with him and listening to him speaking.
No, I can imagine. So that you mentioned about getting involved in, Star Wars and Marvel, which, I'm a big fan of personally, but it's that that must be an incredible thing. Like, at what point in your Disney journey did those acquisitions happen?
So when I was working in the consumer products division when Disney acquired Marvel, and I was part of the team that was working on the integration of the two businesses from a consumer products point of view. So there I got to know all the Marvel teams and started working with them. And I didn't ask for it. I'm a big Marvel fan. I was, I read comics since I was a kid. I still read them. So that was, I didn't have to ask for it, and I was naturally involved in the transition and the acquisition of the business from a European perspective. So lucky again, right place, right time, call it whatever you want. But with Lucas was a little bit different. Lucas was a few years later, and again, massive Star Wars fan. I had worked on Star Wars in my years at 20th Century Fox, so I'm familiar with the brand. At that point, I had to go to my boss and say, you know what, whatever you do, you need one person to work on Star Wars, it's me. And they agreed, so they assigned me to manage the brand from a European perspective in Europe across all businesses. So I was involved in the movies, in the TV series, in the animation, in the consumer products, in everything they were doing. And again, I helped managing the transition and the acquisition and integration of the Star Wars business within Disney, and then run it from there from a European perspective. So two slightly different entry points, but in the end, I was doing the same job for both brands.
Oh, that must have been so exciting, being involved in all of those things.
I was like a kid in a candy store, right?
Yeah, and so what were you pretty much involved in both of their expansion and so on? Because they're big things.
Yeah, and but they don't happen by chance, right? There's a plan, and the plan needs to be designed, developed, and then implemented. And my role was very much that. So my responsibility was to take everything that was happening around the brands, making sense of them, and putting strategies in place and plans in place to maximize the value for the company of those brands. Sometimes it was just accepting what was given to me, a movie, a TV series, but some other times there were gaps and opportunities that I could spot that meant that I had to create stuff from scratch. Where, at a certain point for Star Wars, we're lacking digital content, so I had to create digital content because everything was relying on movies and content out of LA, which could have resonated better in Europe if we had done something else, for example, digital content. So things like that. I had the responsibility of taking what was created centrally and make it work, as well as creating opportunities to do more things.
Yeah. So just going back to the theme parks as well, because I love, one of my favorite days in LA was at the Universal Studios. Absolutely loved that. I love going to the theme parks, been to Disney in a few different countries as well. Are they purposely done to be synergistic and like sort of just help the other businesses?
Absolutely. So Disney is the leader, as we said a number of times, in doing that. So taking an idea, which could be a movie, a book, a theme ride, and expanding it into many other things. So look at what happens with Star Wars, with Marvel. It's not just a movie, it's a whole ecosystem of things that happen and that people enjoy. And in certain instances, the movie is not even the driver of the profit of the revenue. Some other, different example of Disney property. Look at Frozen. Frozen, an animated movie, worked very well in the cinemas, but actually made more money with merchandising and with theme park experience, with everything else that was built around that movie. And again, Disney is the absolute leader of doing that, expanding every idea into all the possible different things that you can do with it.
Yeah,
and that was part of my role. My role was very much coordinating all that, and not only coordinating, but creating even more opportunities if I saw one.
Right. So what sort of thing would that be then?
So for example, there was a particular movie that was working okay as a movie, but we thought that could work even better as a TV series, and it was a kids movie. And so we agreed with the filmmakers to break down the movie into TV episodes, which was never done before, because I thought that the connection, because I was driving, I was using the content to create a merchandising and consumer products opportunity, I would reach more people through TV than through cinemas. And that was giving me the opportunity to sell more toys, basically. And so that's what we did. So that's how you take something and you create something else to reach a bigger objective or a bigger opportunity.
Yeah, I absolutely love watching the things from the 80s, like from the toys that I grew up playing with. And I didn't even realize at the time, like I loved Transformers, Mask, He-Man, all these things. But the TV show was to help sell toys. So I didn't even realize that. But it really does make sense, isn't it? Like, because the kids, you're desperate to watch their 5 or 10 minute cartoon, and then you want to go and buy the toys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still the same now, isn't it? Like a lot of the toys that my nephews are playing with now they're literally playing with my toys from back then. And it's quite cyclical, isn't it? It doesn't really, I guess humans don't ultimately change.
Yeah, absolutely. That a little different, right? So the design is a little different, the techniques that are used to production is a little different, but it essentially is the same thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then he ended, and I moved to healthcare.
Yeah, well, no, exactly. I've got loads of questions on that stuff, so you and I can pick up on that separately about your time in the entertainment business. So yeah, so how did Isokinetic come about?
So again, by chance. So I was at a certain point, I sort of I've done that world, the entertainment world, for 25 years. I was looking for something different to do. I was looking at what are my other passion points. And one thing I do, as we discussed at the very beginning in my life, is it actually started when I moved to London, to be very active from a sports perspective. I started just running to be fit, and then I started saying, oh, okay, and I did challenge to keep going. So I started running races, 10K, then a half marathon, eventually marathons. In the last years, the last maybe 7-8 years, I started doing triathlons as well. So I thought, okay, gosh, besides watching movies and reading comics, I really like sports. So I want to do something that is related to sports. And the other thing I thought when I was looking for my next step in my career, I thought, I actually always worked for American companies. Even when I was in Italy, the advertising agency was an American company. I worked for American clients. I moved to the entertainment world where I work only for American companies. I developed my career internationally working for American companies and learning their way of doing business. So maybe some Italian companies can use that expertise for their international development. And by chance, the two things came together with Isokinetic. I was introduced to Isokinetic by a friend of mine who is the parent of a patient. The patient has a very complex case. He is a fencer young chap at the time. It was maybe 16. He was fencing for the Olympic team in Switzerland. Had a skateboard accident, and everyone told him that he could never fence again until he met Isokinetic, went through a very long rehabilitation program for his injury, and eventually went back to the Olympic team to fence again. But because that was so complex, the father, of course, was very involved. They got to know the leadership team at Isokinetic, and he was asked if he knew anyone that could be the general manager or the managing director of the UK business. And he said at the time, no, I don't know anyone, but I know Andrea, who knows a lot of people in London. So why don't you meet Andrea? And I'm sure he will suggest people to run the business. And so that's what happened. I had a first meeting in which I was going to be told what they were looking for. And then I would have used my network to suggest someone. And in that conversation, at a certain point, we're in the middle of the conversation in which the CEO of the company was telling me about who Isokinetic are and what they do and what they were looking for. And in the middle of the conversation, he looked at me and said, why would you suggest someone? Could it be you? And I thought about it and I was like, yes, it could be me. And that's how we started a whole different conversation about, would I be interested in running the company? And we started from there. And eventually, yes, I was interested. Yes, I was the right person. And I started working for Isokinetic instead of just suggesting someone else that could work for Isokinetic.
So what was that like then? As soon as when you start moving your head out of being involved in the entertainment world and into sports medicine or rehabilitation, so for one, how many similarities are there, and what are also like the change in the contrast of things?
Well, to me, the two things. From a business perspective, the business principles that you apply are the same. The marketing we do is clearly very different than the marketing I do or was doing for Disney, but it follows the same principles. We can talk about the specific, the marketing funnel, how we activate that. But I don't think it's very interesting for the audience to hear all of these details. But say, as running of the business from a commercial point of view is very similar. What is different is the business. What are we actually doing? The business mission is different. Is to look after patients in the best possible way, getting them to perform well if they're athletes, getting them to recover from an injury. So, and the context within which you do that in healthcare is different clearly from what I was used to. So the first months was very much dedicated to my training, understanding this business and learning about the business, understanding the different roles within the company, understanding who does what, and trying to form my point of view on is that the best way of doing what we do, and evolving that. I learned something that was very, very critical for me, which is with Disney, I was part of a company, as we said, that was leader in size and strategy. And here I learned a different kind of leadership, which is Isokinetic is not the biggest company in this business. We are, I think, leaders in size and thinking in Italy, but not in the UK. But we can still be leaders. We can still promote a model which is superior. We can still deliver excellent care to our patients, even if we're not the number one in size. It's your aspiration, is what you want to be, is what you want to deliver. And so it's a different take on leadership that I'm really, really appreciating here. Because it doesn't matter if you're the biggest, if you aspire to be the number one in your day-to-day, in the realization of your day-to-day mission is equally important.
Yeah, and then in terms of like the team that you've got there, like this, how do you disseminate that vision, that purpose to them?
We communicate frequently. So I have different touch points with the team. I have a leadership team within the company, which is formed by myself, my head of administration, my medical director, and the head of rehabilitation. We meet regularly to talk about the big things that we need to do, check how the business is doing, and then take decision on how we can do better or address any issues we might have, and work on the plans, the development plans for the growth of the company. From there, we trickle down individually, but from me to the team, to the wider team, to make them aware of what we're deciding, make them aware of the direction we're taking, ask for actions that are needed for everyone to contribute to the big plan and to what we need to do. So lots of communication. And then that sort of from a formal perspective. From an informal point of view is like Bob, I get very approachable. I like to go around the building and talk to the teams. I go down to the gym frequently. I go to reception. I meet patients. I like that more informal communication that gives me insights into what's going on. Gives me a sense on how people are happy. Are we doing something that we can do better? Are we doing things that are very good and we need to keep doing? So very much going around and be with people, with my people, and understand how they operate, what they think, and if there's anything that they need help with.
Yeah, well, like, from my side, like you and Chris, always really welcoming, approachable, and I think that says a lot in terms of I can see that that's the way you're going to be. If you like it with me and not even working in your organization, then it's so it's good. I can see that is your leadership style, which very much resonates with mine as well, really. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And then in terms of like, I know I am intrigued in terms of that, and again from my perspective, but what do you think that the fundamental bits of marketing are that you've taken from your previous work but into this as well, like just for people that are maybe running their own business in healthcare, what do you think the sort of basic core 3 principles would be, or some things that you would suggest that they would look at?
Well, I would say the principles are the same. So There's something, and again, I'm going a little bit specific, but there's something called the marketing funnel. This how you manage your. We talked about it indirectly in terms of what we're doing with the movie releases. So you create the awareness, you generate interest, and then eventually you want people to take an action on the basis of what you created. And normally it's a funnel because you create awareness among a larger number of people than the people that are interested, that want to take an action, that actually take that action. And so the same principles I was using at Disney of managing this funnel is the same that I use here. But at Disney, maybe I was really very much working more on the top end of the funnel, so creating that big awareness and having as many people as possible to know about a movie or a project or something. But here I find that I work more at the bottom end of the funnel, really very much more on influencing a decision, which is the decision to come for an assessment at Isokinetic and start a rehabilitation program with us. And so the techniques they use are a little bit different. The things like word of mouth, relationship, networking are much more prevalent here than they were when I was doing this big awareness job at Disney. And it's something that requires me and my team to be very well connected with the medical community, very good at creating a community of our patients, because they are the ones that they will suggest to other people to come to us. So all these things are much more prevalent than at Disney. They're also important in that context, but it's just the numbers are different, and therefore you use different marketing techniques. Of course, the size of the company is very different, so we don't have the resources that Disney has. So that requires a lot of creativity, a lot of hands-on work, which is fine. It's not a problem. A lot of coordination with everyone in the team, because everyone has a little role to play. There's no dedicated marketing team here in London. We use a central marketing team in Italy who works with us to make sure that we are effective in our marketing here. So different things, but again, the guiding principles are the same.
Yeah, and then so in terms of that company in Italy, then just give me a quick overview of what the structure looks like there.
So in Italy, we have two different things. So we have the clinics. So in Italy, we have 7 clinics, and then here in London, we have 1, or in the UK, we have 1. They're run sort of similarly. So whatever you find here in London, you'll find in any of the other clinics. We use the same methodology, we use the same rehabilitation environments, the same approach. And that's so. We have all these clinics. And then we have our headquarters. In the headquarters, we have, if you want, the central function. We have central management, we have finance, we have marketing, and we have what we call the beating heart of Isokinetic, which is the education and research department. This is a very important team who their task is to coordinate all the learning and research projects for the company. Learning is very much geared towards making sure that everyone who works within the company has the best possible knowledge applied to the daily care of patients. So they do medical updates, they share the latest research, they share the latest thinking, and they develop protocols that we then implement in our day-to-day work. But they also do our own research or collaborate with other institutions to run research with the goal of evolving the field of sports medicine for the future. And we're very good at sharing that research. Is not just for our own internal purposes, but they also, within that, they do all innovation. And so recently we just opened what we call the Isokinetic Campus, which is where all this activity happens. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, designed to be to help innovation, to help the creativity, to help this evolution of the field of business we're in. And then everything that is created there, it gets implemented in the different clinics. So it's a great place to visit. It's very inspiring. You will see our prototype gym of the future. You'll see all the different things that we're experimenting and we're researching. Great place to visit.
Yeah, and then you've also got the conference, which is like an incredible schedule. Like I was there earlier on this year, and it's just So that who pulls together the schedule
So
that
that's
you
again, that's part of the work of the Education and Research Department. So if you want the most visible outcome of their work is the conference, which is an annual event, is dedicated to football medicine. This 2023, we did it in London, and it was dedicated to what was the theme? Oh gosh, I don't remember anymore. I come back, but I know very much the theme of next year. Next year will be in Madrid. You will be at the end of May, and it's dedicated to the transition or the implementation of science into practice, bridging science into practice. So taking all the information, all the knowledge of the insights that we get from research, and how do we apply them in the day-to-day care of patients, in this case, football players, because of the Football Medicine Conference. It's the largest football medicine conference in the world. It attracts about 2,500, 3,000 attendees from over 80 countries. We have a very rich scientific program with 200 plus speakers, top people in their field that share their knowledge and there's debates and there's various opportunities to learn, to network, and to really think about how to do in the best possible way our job, but not only hearing it from us and our point of view, but hearing it from the best people in the business that share their views. So it's not an opportunity for us to indoctrinate people on the esoteric methodology. Very much, a methodology is very much a forum for discussion and debate. Yeah,
no, it was great. It was really, I really enjoyed the day. I was there on the Monday this year, and I really enjoyed it. Thought, yeah, saw loads of great speakers. So, no, I definitely recommend people attending that. Yeah, I'm conscious of your time here. I'm already going over, so we spent too much time talking about Luke Skywalker. But anyway, so yeah, just a couple more things to take away then. So for one, like what would your advice be for people that are, say, working in healthcare or looking to start their own business? Like you've come from into this world and you've been a very experienced business leader. What would your takeaway advice be for people that are looking to do that?
Yeah, to me, again, this is very personal. As I said, I'm driven by curiosity. So to me, the opportunity of learning something new every day is really motivating, and I strive to do that on a daily basis. So my journey was very much understanding that I could apply my knowledge and my skills in a different field, but being very respectful of the fact that, and mindful of the fact that I know everything about that business, so I need to learn. And so keep learning, keep growing, keep questioning. Are we doing the right thing for the right reasons? Is that the best way of doing things? That's number one. The second one is always to aspire to be the best, right? And again, I learned that here in a different way that I did before. There's still always an opportunity to be the best, no matter what the size is, no matter what the context is. And that again, there's another thing that gives you motivation. So don't compromise on the end result. In my case, is the care for a patient. Never compromise on that. And therefore, the goal of my organization is to be the absolute best in sports medicine and orthopedic rehabilitation for our patients. And that's where everything comes together: the science, the research, the learning, the development, the education, the daily practice, and making sure that every decision we take is geared towards providing the best possible care for our patients.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, I think that's a good moment to finish on. So yeah, very positive message. And again, just to reiterate from my side, it's always a great environment whenever I come into your facility. Everyone's really welcoming, really friendly. So I always appreciate that. So thank you for being so welcoming then, and thanks for sharing your time and experiences today as well. You're very welcome. It was my pleasure. Brilliant. No, well, I definitely, just genuinely, let's block out a couple of hours when I come down next, and we'll get a coffee and talk more about Disney. I'll tell you more. Brilliant. Thanks, Andrea. Appreciate your time on that, and I'll see you soon. You're welcome. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.